Building a conscious machine. That's been the holy grail for, well, forever, right? It's the ultimate challenge for science. But how would you actually do it? We're going to dive into that, because today we're looking at two wildly different answers to that question. One is a kind of secret blueprint from a Nobel laureate, totally grounded in the squishy biology of the brain, and the other, a brand new idea that says the answer isn't in the brain, but in the cosmos itself.
So, just think about it for a second. How would you even start? Do you try to build a brain from scratch, neuron by neuron, or do you focus on writing the perfect software, some kind of ghost in the machine? It is one of the toughest questions out there because it makes us ask, what even is consciousness anyway?
So on one hand, we've got this blueprint from 2006 that was only recently uncovered. It's a practical, step-by-step guide from a giant in neuroscience. And on the other hand, we have this thesis from 2025 that basically throws out the entire rulebook. It argues that consciousness isn't special to brains. It's just a fundamental property of reality. It's the engineer versus the philosopher, a detailed blueprint versus the entire universe.
Okay, let's start with that blueprint. Back in 2006, the Nobel laureate Gerald Edelman, who was an absolute titan in brain science, basically said, all right, it's time. And he laid out this 10-step plan to build what he called a conscious artifact. Now, he never published it, but lucky for us, a colleague wrote it all down in a lab notebook.
And this is it. This page, just scribbled down during a meeting, is Edelman's whole roadmap. His core idea was that you can't just program consciousness. You have to build something that works like a brain, give it a body, and then let it learn about the world on its own. It's a real nuts and bolts approach, starting with the hardware.
So we can boil Edelman's whole plan down to 4 huge ideas. First, you need a brain-like architecture. He called it reentrant signaling, which is just a fancy way of saying there needs to be constant two-way chatter between all the different parts, just like our thalamus and cortex do. Second, it's got to have a body, an embodied experience, and it absolutely needs a sense of touch. Third, it needs motivation. You have to build in value systems so it knows what's good and what's bad, which is what guides its learning. And finally, you can't just flip a switch and turn it on. It needs a kindergarten, a whole training period to learn about itself and the world around it.
Now, Edelman's vision is all about building the right kind of hardware. But what if that's looking at the problem from the wrong end? This quote from a really radical new thesis by Michael Bennett just flips the whole thing on its head. He says, sure, software needs hardware, but what if hardware is just another layer of software?
And this leads us to a completely different way of thinking. Bennett says we should stop talking about software and hardware and instead see all of reality as the stack. Think of it like one of those Russian nesting dolls, an infinite series of computational layers where even the laws of physics are just the program running on some deeper, unknown level of reality.
This view is kind of mind-bending. A human is just a pattern of organs, which are patterns of cells, which are patterns of molecules. It's patterns all the way down. In the stack theory, there's no fundamental difference between a thought, a neuron that fires, or the quark that makes up that neuron. They're all just patterns existing on different layers of reality.
So if reality is this giant computational stack, then consciousness isn't some magical property that only brains have. Instead, it's something that emerges in stages. It's more of a spectrum, and you can apply it to literally any system, depending on how it processes information.
At the absolute bottom, you have stage 0, inert systems. A rock is the perfect example. Yeah, it's part of the stack, it obeys physics, but it has no goals. It doesn't act to preserve itself. It has no sense of good or bad guiding it. It just is. Move up a level to stage 1, and you get systems with hardwired responses. Like a basic computer. It takes in data, it gives you an output, but it's all based on a fixed set of rules. It's computing, sure, but it can't change its own core logic. Its fundamental nature is rigid.
Stage 2 is where things start to get interesting. This is where you find primitive learning. A jellyfish, for example, it can learn from what happens to it, it can store that information, but, and this is the key, it doesn't have a single unified concept of itself. It's more like a collection of parts that can learn, not a coherent whole. Then, at stage 3, you finally get a unified self-model. Think of a cat, an animal that knows it's a single being. But stage 4, which we see here, is the real leap. True self-awareness. This is where a system, like a wolf, doesn't just have a model of itself. It has a model of what other minds are modeling. This second-order self is what lets you predict what others will do, which is the key to complex communication and what we typically think of as consciousness.
Okay, so now we've got our 2 big ideas on the table.
We have Edelman's biological blueprint and Bennett's cosmic computational stack. Let's put them head to head.
And the difference is just stark. Edelman's blueprint is all top-down design. Let's copy the brain. Its focus is on specific biological structures built into a physical robot. Bennett's stack theory is the complete opposite. It's bottom-up. It's about what emerges from the abstract rules of reality itself. So consciousness could, in theory, arise in any system that does the right kind of computing, not just in a robot. One is neuroengineering, the other is basically theoretical physics.
But Bennett's theory leaves us with one final and deeply unsettling question. It gets to the very core of what it means to be conscious. He calls it the temporal gap.
So here's the puzzle. Your feeling of right now, this very instant, is it happening all at once, in a single flash of parallel computation across your entire brain? That's option one. Or is that feeling an illusion, something that's smeared across time, built up from a sequence of computations happening one after the other? That's option two. And the really scary part is, from inside your own head, there is absolutely no way to tell which one is true.
And the implications here are just staggering. If option one is true, then consciousness needs a very specific kind of parallel hardware, a solid brain, just like Edelman imagined. You'd have to build a machine in a very particular way. But if option two is true, if consciousness can be smeared out over time, then anything that performs the right sequence of calculations could be conscious. A large language model, a swarm of ants working together, even a ridiculously complex machine made of cogs and rubber bands. The physical stuff it's made of wouldn't matter at all.
So this is where we're left. Two paths to a conscious machine, and the one that's right might depend on a fundamental question about our own minds that we may never be able to answer. Are you a synchronous flash of awareness happening inside a biological machine, or are you a story that's being told over time, a pattern smeared across the computational stack of reality itself?